Hey everyone, some big changes afoot and some exciting features to announce that I've been working on with Firehawk, open source VFX infrastructure. So we've now got the ability to disable any connection that you might have for a licensed server on site. So it's no longer required that your licensed server needs to connect to the cloud, and it's possible to use usage-based licensing. So as long as you're paying for AWS usage-based licenses, then you're able to run Houdini Engine and Houdini Mantra workloads through Deadline. So that's a really big step because it means that we don't have to get engine licenses or Mantra licenses over the VPN. And it means that we can scale, paying essentially in blocks of like an hour, I think you purchase them in, but the actual granularity of the license usage, I think it goes down to about, I think it's a minute, because when a license gets checked out by a render node, it checks out up to 1 minute's worth. And that means that the granularity of that render node, it might actually be able to use it in seconds. But if you were to only render a 10-second job and then quit, you would end up using 1 minute's worth of usage. So, yeah, there's a few minor trade-offs there, but all in all, pretty amazing ability for us to scale up on the Natch. And aside from that, the other abilities I've been looking at is AWS File Gateway. So getting rid of the requirement to have a NAS on site that you would share with cloud, which obviously is super handy, but it's also, it's extra infrastructure that people might not have. So I want to be able to make this as fully cloud deployed as possible with as few on-site resources required as possible, and then be able to scale up from there. So now we can run the file gateway kind of operating as a NAS on the AWS side, and that provides an NFS share file system. And so that provides some high-speed storage available for your render nodes to essentially mount your cloud storage as a file volume. So, we use S3 as our cloud storage, and we can then essentially create an endpoint that makes that an NFS share that we can then mount to our render nodes as NFS. And we can also mount that over the VPN on site. So I was doing tests where I could mount that to my Mac, and then I could essentially do small file transfers, over the VPN to that file share, so that we have some kind of shared volume between our hybrid infrastructure. So that's all been afoot the last few weeks, and what I'm working on now is something that has been on my mind for a while. When I made the switch to try to deploy everything from the cloud using Cloud9, instead of deploying from maybe a laptop that you might be running on site, we're now able to deploy from Cloud9. But something that I was worried about when I was looking at that option is we no longer had a way to automate the VPN connection on site at the same time. So we no longer had a way to automatically establish that VPN connection without some extra user interaction. Because before, if you're on site and you spin up all your infrastructure, we've also got the VPN client on site. So we implicitly know when the VPN server turns on that we're able to establish a connection with that thing. Now, because the deployment happens all from cloud, there's no implicit connection that we have to the VPN client to tell it to just establish a connection with our new access server. So I've been working on something that is meant to smooth that out and make things a lot easier. Again, trying to get rid of as many parameters as possible that a user might have to interface with. So now when we turn on everything in cloud, we might turn on a virtual machine that is going to operate as a VPN, and we can generate a credential that we copy into that VPN gateway, and that allows it to essentially poll for a notification that it's now able to SSH into Vault and get our VPN certificates in order to establish the VPN connection. So because it's still using SSH certificates to get those credentials, it's still got a good level of protection against man-in-the-middle attacks to acquire the VPN cert through that channel. But what this is all going to mean is that you're going to be able to have a VPN operating as a service, and even when the access server changes and all of the credentials change dynamically, we have some means of being able to update that connection so that the credentials that are used over the wire could change daily. The certificates, the password, all of that could change and be dynamic every day. But our service is able to essentially poll a message system so it can reestablish that VPN connection. And this is a really big step because it means once it's working, it's going to be, again, more hands-off and a lot less user interaction required to get that VPN working. There's always going to be like a little bit of understanding required to get a gateway working with your router. But it also means that there's a pathway in the future to making the VPN even simpler for those that don't need a gateway. If they just want a really simple VPN connection, just with like a single host, then this is going to give us a pathway for the user to not really have to do much. They're just going to have to essentially copy some credentials over the two connections, just a basic key, and verify that I guess kind of comparing a one-time password sort of thing, ensuring that there's nothing that's interfering in between that connection. So all of this is well on track to getting a lot easier. And that's about it. So I'm going to get back into it.